Yo, yo, what's up, good people? It's the boys from the Phantom Geek Zone back again with another hot review for you. As usual, I'm Izzy.
I'm Riyaal.
And today we're going to be breaking down Man of Steel.
Yeah, Man of Steel. Really excited for this one.
Yeah, man, it's a huge one, I think.
Yeah, it's the first of many of an era.
Yeah, because this is still like... Actually, it's the opening act
it's the
for
opening
the Snyderverse. Yeah.
Well, not the opening act for us, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's why in my head I'm thinking of the chronological order, but I'm like, no. Before there was a DCEU universe, it came through via Man of Steel. But yeah, man, without any further ado, I think we're just gonna get right to the crux of it, And before we even get to the specifics of the movie, look, we're talking Superman.
Yeah.
Arguably, the most famous,
iconic.
Yeah, man, most famous superhero in the world.
Yeah.
One of the most recognizable icons across genres, countries, whatever.
It's like Coke, but for superheroes.
Yeah. This is like.
And I'm talking about Coca-Cola. Okay, please, guys.
It definitely doesn't get any more global than this. So with that said. Look, for many people, myself included, the old Christopher Reeves movie was like, the quintessential representation of Superman. Mind you, it wasn't even the first iteration, certainly wasn't the last. There have been so many even between, these two, Christopher Reeves and Henry Cavill. But he became the face of Superman to the point where, if you pay attention as far as who's been cast as Superman from Henry Cavill to, I believe, is it Brandon Routh who was the last one before?
Yeah, that was the big movie guy.
Yeah, so from Christopher Reeves, my bad, from Christopher Reeves all the way to Brandon Routh, everyone was chosen based on how similar to Christopher Reeves they looked. Henry Cavill was the first time they actually, deviated from it because he's kind of in there, but it's the super buff version of it. So just to highlight how important Christopher Reeves Superman was at the time. And if you remember the aesthetic of the movie, I'm not sure when you got on it. I got on it as a kid, but of course, in all the years, watched it a couple of times as well. The movie itself had like that bright aesthetic. But
it's more tugged towards kids.
But a lot of adults were into it as well because even back then, science fiction movies as a whole were not taken seriously. That's the first thing. And if one day when we're big and grown as a whole podcast, we'll add little clips to give context and things we're saying. In this case, back then, the level of, you couldn't even call it CGI, man. But in terms of
special
effects for sci-fi movies in those days was the most horrible thing ever. You sometimes literally have like that little flying saucer thing. They have strings attached to it, and that's how they show people in outer space. They have like a black background, and it was very childish to say the least. And the 70s as a whole, which is the year that birthed the blockbuster, by the way, it also took science fiction movies to a whole other level. This is where Star Wars came out.
Jaws.
This is where Jaws came out. So even movie storytelling as a whole. This is also when The Godfather came out. So as a decade for movies, this is when you took it to a whole other level. And the Superman movie is in that conversation as well. Hence it being held in such high regard. Just painting the context of where we started off, and just to help us understand where and how we got to where we are now. So with all of that established, and now Zack Snyder, who's the writer and director of Man of Steel, along with I believe David S. Goyer, who also wrote on Nolan is also the producer of this.
Christopher Nolan,
half of the story. He's the guy who brought Zack Snyder in actually to work on this movie. In terms of the direction that Zack Snyder decided to take the character, I think just maybe give your breakdown of that. From that super hopeful guy that we once had to this
more
darker, broody,
melodramatic. I think at the time I kind of liked it because I was maybe in high school, something a little bit different, but we're still on the Marvel hype train. So you want to, you still want that clean cut version things, but I think it was nice. It was different. And then rewatching it now, 10, 12 years later, I'm actually enjoying it a lot more. Being a more darker approach, more I would say more adult themes as opposed to the MCU at the time, if you're comparing apples with apples. Because here you're looking at identity crisis of faith with Clark or Kal-El, whoever you want to call it there. Then you've also got, General Zod. He's got his own struggle as well, trying to figure out his place in the world. And then you've also got Lois as well as a side character, and she wasn't just a damsel in distress as it would have been in Christopher Reeve or something.
Yeah. She's actually the person through, because with the story, especially if you're trying to explain a certain concept, you tend to need someone who acts as the audience's embodiment basically, and she was that. That's a very good point. Yeah.
So I liked his takes on the characters, and specifically Superman, Clark Kent, because it wasn't just this clean-cut version of him. He was where we see when we first see him, he's in the middle of nowhere on a ship, on a boat, fishing. What is he doing there? Should he be flying around Metropolis, saving people? But no, it was his journey. Like, this was quite nice because it showed his journey to becoming Superman. And also the sacrifices that he has to make within his own belief system, which I really, really enjoyed. And then we'll chat about that maybe a little bit later on, how he had to where he questioned his morality or doing what is right versus what is moral, how do you choose between those two? And I thought that was portrayed quite nicely in the fight with General Zod. So I really liked the edgier take of Superman. I don't know if you have something along the same lines, or do you disagree?
For me, I sort of not even went back and forth. I changed opinions along the way. We live in an era now where before a movie comes out, damn near everything about it. So as soon as they release the set pictures and the look of the modern Superman and that whole thing, in spite of the other iteration that came through, I still held Christopher Reeve as number one. And not only for the nostalgia of it, but I think it's also because the story as a whole, A to Z, as I said, everyone else was modeled after him as far as who they chose. And then with the stories, they'll try and do their own thing, but ultimately they still try to do that light-hearted hope sort of thing.
Pay homage to the
original. And so this was not necessarily a 180, but as close to a 180 as you could get. He just went, as I said, in a whole other direction. So initially, I found it quite jarring. I was like, no man, what's going on? This thing, it's in such a dark tone, visually speaking. And as stupid as it may sound today, but this is also the first iteration we got without the red underpants. Which, look,
people were divided.
There were vibes about it. They were divided, to say the least. And that's the thing about these, comic book characters. I know for the most part, it's just a movie, whatever. But if you just take a second to understand the attachment that certain people have to these characters, because we talk a lot about the movies that came before, but there were so many iterations that kept him in people's minds. It's the toys that we saw, or we even had growing up.
The countless comic books.
It's the comic books, it's the cartoons, So time and time again, and with all of them, a lot of variations they had, there's certain styles that they'll do, the S design, there's certain shades of the red and blue that they would use, but the underpants was there, and that is a representation of sticking to the original design. That's kind of the significance of it, because I know how stupid it sounds for someone to just say that, even more so out of context. But so seeing that, for me, it was like, look, as a new director in this space, of course, we want you to do your own thing, don't retell an old story. But at the same time, I think we don't give them much room to divert from what we, deem to be the most necessary characteristics of Superman. So I was like, I don't know about this. I went to watch the movie, and I still wasn't convinced. This is 2013, as you said, it was 12 years back. But upon rewatching it, for the purposes of this review, which was maybe the first time I've ever watched this movie, actually, since 2013, if not having watched it just before Batman vs Superman, so around 2017, I can't remember. Either way, it was a very long time since I'd seen it, and it was the first time I was like, give it a chance. Don't come in with preconceived notions, which wouldn't have helped because I know the movie anyway.
Yeah.
So now I'm able to just let myself follow into the story and, observe the world as Zack Snyder wanted to present it. And I think he justified the world that he wanted to present to us. Some additional information as far as context is concerned. I've mentioned earlier, Christopher Nolan is the guy that brought Zack Snyder, or at least suggested Zack Snyder, to Warner Brothers as far as who to bring in to direct this movie. And with that connection to Christopher Nolan, keep in mind that he's the guy who changed Batman for the better.
Yeah.
Batman started off, depending on how far back you want to go, there was the 60s with Adam West, which was super campy, goofy, cartoony.
Yeah.
And then
Michael Keaton.
Yeah, Tim Burton and Michael Keaton came in the late 80s. I think 89 is when the first movie came out. And that's when people realized that comic book movies could actually be taken seriously. Because even though Superman came out, the original Superman came out before then, about 10 years or so actually, because it was, 78 or 9, it still had its fun, goofy moments. Three things that come to mind is he would change his outfit in a phone booth, just like the comic book Superman. But the way they would do it in the movie, he would literally just, spin around and then his outfit is changed. I remember there was another one where he ran through a revolving door and he changed his outfit. Yeah. There was another scene where he wanted to go underground. He stood on a tar road, spun around, and then kind of dug a hole into the ground, And then there's of course the famous, or should I say infamous scene where Lois Lane had died. And then he wanted to reverse time.
And
he spun the world counterclockwise, and then that reversed time. And I think at the time, people were probably like, okay, cool. And then as the years go by, we're like, nah, man, come on, we'll believe in a guy from another planet who can fly, who's invincible, but now you're pushing it. So again, with Tim Burton coming in, he added more realism to a comic book movie. And then fast forward to 2005, Christopher Nolan takes that to a whole other playing field with Batman Begins.
You've got a nice way of phrasing Batman, the Dark Knight series. It's like, it's not a superhero movie. It's a
crime film.
It's a crime film with superhero elements.
Yes. So Christopher Nolan was like, okay, we're not going to do a comic book movie. We will use comic book characters, cool, but we're going to make an actual film. Yeah. And he did that, across the trilogy. And I think Zack Snyder took hints from that and said, okay, let's not do the goofy superhero stuff. Let's just tell a story about a guy who just happens to have these abilities, but we're going to keep it as grounded as possible, And I think that then made all the other elements make a lot of sense. So I just wanted to get, your feel around the overall tone before we get into some of the specifics. But we've touched on the characters a bit, so I think we can just expound a little more in terms of what we thought about them. Firstly, we didn't get right into it, but the casting of Henry Cavill as Superman and everyone else.
I think for me it's a positive casting. I think for anyone who likes this iteration or the DCEU, Henry Cavill's probably the best casting they did. He's got the physique, he's got the look. As you mentioned, he's got the grittiness to him as well. And I guess it also helps knowing him now. He's also a comic book geek. Or he's a geek in general.
Super, built his own gaming PCs and everything.
100%. Built gaming PCs, Warhammer, all the things. For him to play this character and somebody you could say one of us, you can see it actually, it comes through. I really liked his casting. You got anything to add to that?
I think it's more an emphasis than anything that they did quite an amazing job with. He fit the look, he fit the role. I had some issues with him upon first watching it because I felt like his delivery is a bit off and wooden. But again, now with this latest rewatch and fully getting into the context of things, I realized it's more a matter of him portraying how lost he is in the world.
Because just his character, like that first 20 minutes to him in all these different places, like a pilgrimage. Like he went on a pilgrimage to find himself.
He's going on a journey trying to find himself, and even up to the age of 33, the fact that he's an alien and in some other sense he's aware of it. Of course it's only in that 33rd year where he realized I'm from a whole other planet, but just the fact that he's got different abilities to everyone else, and people keep pointing it out. Hey, you're weird, what's going on with you? And his parents saying, you're not like other kids, you gotta calm down, tone it down, all of those. I think the performance then made a lot of sense in terms of, okay, this is why he, carries himself in this manner, which I didn't understand at first, but now I'm like, nah, you did a good job.
In terms, I would say, great casting.
Yeah.
Other big characters, you've got Lois Lane, Amy Adams.
Yeah.
I also think really, really good casting. Played a side character really well. One of those side characters, I liken it to maybe the Pepper Potts, where definitely a side character, but owned every scene.
Yeah.
And then also it was quite nice to see that their interaction as well. They met and then they gradually became interested in each other. Not Clark meeting her at the Daily Planet and saving her all the time.
Yeah.
So just to see that she's not just a damsel in distress,
Yeah.
She's got the investigative journalism. I mean, she's the one who found out who he actually is.
Yeah, and it made sense how it actually happened. She literally went down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
All the breadcrumbs that already were out there, because she said, okay, we're gonna start with all these stories that people have been saying, and then we'll see where that's gonna take us.
And then she got to where she wanted to be.
Yeah.
And who else? General Zod.
Yes. Michael Shannon.
I think I mean, what more can you say about Mr. Villain, the villain himself?
Man, so underrated. I feel like as much as people have always loved him in this role, let's get that out the way. They've always loved him there. But
just to contextualize, Michael Shannon's always playing the villain. In anything you watch, he's the villain.
He's the villain.
That's his
typecast, like the weird guy. But he's never like classic straight man sort of character. But as much as people have always loved him in this role, I don't know if he gets enough props in the grander conversation of great villains, not to mention great portrayals, particularly in the comic book world as well.
Yeah, I think I didn't realize how good he was until the rewatch.
Yes.
Just the whole, kind of like a Thanos, he has an ideology that he's wanting to fulfill.
Yeah, that philosophy.
And it kind of makes sense.
I would say not even kind of, like I just fully got it. Like he added a lot of, the portrayal added a lot of gravitas to the character of General Zod, a beloved character, don't get it twisted. But we've only, as far as memory serves, I may be wrong, because I mean, besides the movies, there's also so many TV shows that have done the Superman story. But I only remember 2 portrayals of General Zod. That's from the original Superman, of course, and then even the guy in Smallville. The guy in Superman, for his time, I think was incredible. I haven't watched that movie in a while, and in fact, at some point, I think, especially with the new Superman coming out later this year, in June, it'll be nice to just do like a little
retrospective,
on all the Superman characters we've had thus far. But in any case, at the time as a kid, I remember I liked him, but I didn't think too much of him because I'm just like Superman. I would like to go back and see what I think of his portrayal in today's terms. As far as watching it in today's eyes, and then I can compare a little better. But without that comparison having been done properly, I would say Michael Shannon is arguably the best, if not the best. Don't get it twisted. The guy from the original Superman, Terrence Stamp was his name. He set a very, very high standard. I mean, even the whole thing of Neo before Zod, he embodied those words and made it like such a thing, and they took on a life of their own. So we're not gonna shun what he has done with it. The guy from Smallville, I absolutely hated. I'm not even gonna sugarcoat. I don't know what you thought of him.
The fact that I love Smallville and I can't remember General Zod might just tell you exactly what you need to know.
Exactly. So for Michael Shannon to then come in as this dope modern take on it, again, a lot of gravitas that he added to the character. And
just the delivery as well. Everything was like, puts you on edge.
Everything was great. Everything made sense. And here's why. I even said, I fully understood his perspective, not sort of. It's because we always had this thing, good guy, bad guy, and I think it's high time we started to, even in terms of the verbiage, I mean, we could go to simple as protagonist, antagonist, just because of the inherent prejudice that the whole villain and enemy thing does carry. Not to say we're going to be too strict about it, we'll use them interchangeably, but I want everyone to just understand our context in the use of those words going forward, no matter which one we choose. And I think this is a perfect example as to why, because it's all a matter of perspective. naturally there's an inclination to root for the good guy and everything. But I think the older we get, the more you take the time to be like, hold on, let this guy cook. Like, he's actually onto something, you know. So I think Matthew Shannon for me just did that in an amazing manner. And I know we're touching on characters. We'll circle back in terms of why exactly, you know, when we get to the story. But yeah, I think in terms of casting highlights, I don't know how many more there are.
Russell Crowe?
There's Russell Crowe, of course. As Jor-El. There's Diane Lane as the mom.
Lara.
No, the Earth mom.
Earth mom.
Martha Kent.
Not bad.
Martha Kent.
And then you got Lawrence Fishburne as Perry.
As Perry White. So yeah, those were like, you know, some cool characters. But I think out of all of those, I'd probably give the biggest shout outs to Russell Crowe. But more so, everyone did a great acting job.
Yeah.
Don't get it twisted. It's more what the story allowed and who was given more meat. Where Kevin Costner, shout outs to him as well as Jonathan Kate. But yeah, things in terms of the story, definitely favored, you know, Jor-El as well as Jonathan Kent a little more. Hence, you know, Kevin Costner and Russell Crowe just standing out and shining a bit more. But just in terms of who they cast, I don't think anyone was misplaced.
No.
I like the chemistry among just about everyone who was there, which I didn't upon first watching. But again, I'm like, Clark or Henry Cavill seems so weird and off. But now I get it's because the character literally felt lost until maybe halfway through the movie or so. Like it took quite some time for him to get comfortable and find his footing. So we certainly can't blame them for that. And I think with that established, it's as good a time as any to then get into you know some deeper specifics as far as the story is concerned. You mentioned earlier on that this is more of a journey sort of movie about him getting to the Superman thing. Now my question is, because we're in between the modern age, you know, short attention span, and the fact that we've seen certain characters before, and when you watch a superhero movie, you maybe don't have the most amount of patience in terms of them getting to who the character is. And as much as we may want to blame it on the short attention span of the day, I don't think it's that. It's because of the, conditioning that we have been put through. If you think of every comic book movie, or at least all the great ones, about 20-25 minutes is what it will take for the hero to actually get to the costume, you know, or at least get their powers.
Yeah.
And this is one of the few movies where they went in the other direction. It's like, no, we're going to take our time, build the character, and then we're going to get to the superhero stuff later. So in terms of how they manage the balance of which portion of the story gets how much time, what's your take on that?
Let's see. I think, I'm not going to look only at Superman himself. I'm trying to look at the story as a whole. If you think about that first 20-25 minutes, it's all on Krypton. There's nothing to do with Superman at all. It's just establishing the villain and the protagonist, the first protagonist being Jor-El.
Not to mention Superman's full background as well.
Giving us Superman's background. Why is he Superman? What happened to his world, and also just his psyche going into it, you know, what he's missing out on and so forth. So it was really nice. They world built a dying world, but they world built it. You know, you got the codex that was shown, the animal that Jor-El was flying, as well as the spaceships, the Phantom Zone. So you got a whole lot of world building. As well as you got Zod's motivations as well. You know, it's like, this is what I was raised to do, type of thing. And giving you the idea of why the Codex is so important to the Kryptonians. So I think in terms of that pacing, it was a little bit different to what you're usually used to, because they gave quite a bit of meat to the background. So if you're looking at maybe an Iron Man, say for instance, if we're comparing, he's always had issues with his father, but how it started, they've never really given the time of day as to why he's like that. It's always been here or there, dotted here or there. Whereas here they actually gave Jor-El a lot of time to establish who he is and how he wants Clark or Kal-El to be raised and be Superman. Then going on from that, then you go straight into Clark Kent's story now. You know, him on the boat, on the oil rig. Then in the bar, gets a beer thrown in his face, and he
yeah.
skewers a truck. It's like, be careful, if somebody's not saying something, they're thinking something.
There's a reason, yeah.
Just going through that, and then you finding him. I'm assuming the North Pole is where they found the spaceship. Just in between. But obviously he knows his powers, and in between those you get the flashback. The reasoning behind why he's at this point in his life now. From the bus scene at school, the bus scene, then him talking to Jonathan Kent talking to him saying, you're the reason you're the answer to what is out there. Just giving him. And this is talking to like a 7-8-year-old.
Yeah.
You're saying, you know what, you're the biggest discovery in the world, and no one knows about you.
And no one can know.
No, yeah. And you've got the weight of the world on your shoulders.
Literally,
but, still be a young kid.
Nice, man.
That's another one I'm missing, definitely.
There were a lot of like great nuggets that he dropped. But I think to echo your sentiments as far as it gave some. And here's the thing for me, as far as the context that we were given, it works on two levels. One, just pure storytelling. Two, which is arguably more important, if you ask even the most casual of comic book fans, maybe even someone, not the most hardcore, but let's stick with the more casual guys. What's Superman's origin? They'll tell you he comes from Krypton, his parent died, he was sent to Earth. But no one knows why any of those things happened, right? I mean,
I think it's what made like Smallville so compelling.
Yeah, it's also got into the minutiae of all of that stuff.
It's that bit that people always skip over,
Literally.
The growing up.
That's what I was saying, right? It's always about, get to the powers and that sort of thing. Or, have one little fight and then all of a sudden you've transformed into the hero you were always meant to be. So with this, they gave some details. So even for me, as a friend, I've spoken so much about, loving Superman as a child, this, that, whatever. I've never known why Krypton blew up. I've never known why he was sent to Earth. And in this one, of course, every iteration will have its own thing. I believe with Smallville, it was along the lines of, because again, the Kryptons are a super intelligent race.
Yeah.
And, they conquer other planets, they travel a lot, and that sort of thing. In Smallville, Jor-El had been to Earth at one point and then loved, the environment, the people. And then when the time came for the planet when the planet was being destroyed, he was like, where can I send my son so he can live? Oh yes, that one family I saw, that one planet anyway, I think can take good care of him. But in this one, they went in a slightly different direction. Earth was a deliberate choice, but it was also done in connection to our sun, because in the mythology, on Krypton, everyone is pretty much immortal, as much as they may be intelligent. But on Earth, the sun is what gives Superman his powers, And as a kid, I always thought, he's strong just because he's from another planet. So, although the whole sun power thing I did learn, even before watching Man of Steel, but Jor-El himself, with all his knowledge, was like, no. If he goes here, we're going to give him a greater chance of survival. Because keep in mind, they're sending an infant into outer space and to go to some other planet.
Random strangers,
Literal random planet, because he didn't know much about the planet itself. It's just the scientific discoveries that were made about Earth, but that's on a very macro scale. So I think that's a nice touch to add into it. And then the why, as far as Krypton being destroyed, the whole element
resources,
resources, it's the same thing we have here, overpopulation, there's over mining, and whatever, we're just over consuming our natural resources, and there's only so much that our planet can take. They, being so advanced, were miles ahead where that conversation is concerned. Hence now the core of the planet not being stable and crumbling to the ground. And another key piece of information that was revealed during this time is the fact that it's only because Zod was always just an army general.
Yeah.
But it's only when this happened that he decided to have a coup in order to take over Krypton and basically lead it in a direction where they are no longer going to be extinct, because they are literally staring at the face of extinction, which is another thing I was not aware of before. Maybe the other iterations didn't make that clear, or whatever the case may be, but that for me was the first and arguably most important key piece of information as far as his motivation, and him doing what he did. But so you were talking about,
his journey.
Just giving that amount of time to not only Krypton, but even the build up to Superman.
So like you could justify the long runtime. And then I think what I noticed was the timing was very nice because he had just met Jor-El in the spaceship, got his suit, did his first flight, and then Zod comes in. So it's like he found himself, and then the problem.
And just there does Zod come through, and where in another movie it could have been easily, discarded as that, of course, convenient.
Yeah.
Zod says to him, "Yo, remember he gets in the ship and then he activates the ship basically. Upon activating it, we were able to pick up that there's an activation somewhere out there and the exact location as well. Hence, they're finding him just after cause and effect.
Yeah.
So again, I'm like, man, the storytelling on this is so multi-layered that I don't even know if the biggest fans are aware of just how well put together this entire thing was, But yeah, I also like that. It's like, okay, we give the motivation. Yeah. He's of course had the powers the entire time. And then now once he dons that suit, Zod then comes through,
Comes through and reveals it. You're not alone in the world or in the universe.
What did you think of that choice of reveal? Because usually they'll just come in, have their fight, then people will run with their cameras and see. But he immediately just says to the entire planet, hey, there's one of our people out there, we want him. So that style of intro.
I think it's very, like if you're thinking about Zod, it's a very tactical one. Because it's basically saying, I've hacked all your systems.
Yes.
And I've hacked all your systems. So basically, I control you now.
Yeah, it's like the biggest display you could do. Basically.
It's like, you guys are meaningless to me. Two, he's done it to the whole world. So in essence, basically saying, I only want one. So basically saying, turn against this person.
And he's not one of yours. So just
he's inciting the masses.
Yes.
So it's very, very tactical, which I think is such a cool entrance.
Wow, okay.
There's more than one way to show how powerful you are.
And he's a smart guy, as strong as he is.
Yeah, he's a general, he's a tactician.
Okay, damn.
So that's my insight. Whether you agree with it or not.
I think it's brilliant. I think for me, I was maybe a little too focused on how different it was, compared to anything else. He's a being that, with their suits and the spaceships they can fly. Usually it's like, okay, you fly, or you find where the leaders of the world are and you just go there. But this, I think, was nice, where he's just chilling and basically puts the onus on them. I think that was brilliant, especially because he didn't have the means to locate Clark specifically. Yes, we get to the ship and whatever, but Clark wasn't there anymore. So I think, you're speaking to some other layers that I hadn't considered before. But very, very, I think, genius of them.
It's a really good entrance. And then obviously you've got the second entrance where he comes up, where the actual physical presence.
Where actually steps down.
The quintessential, was it villain drop, or from Deadpool, super villain entrance.
That's pretty cool, I think. And because for me, I think at first, this is now with the rewatch, not back then. I was a little confused by how things unfolded from there, because I'm like, this guy's just saying you're not alone, whatever. But it's like, especially with the US, the intelligence system, how the government are, the military, and I felt like they didn't do enough homework or digging in to verify. That's how it initially felt. Then upon rewatching it, I was like, wait a minute, what am I talking about? There's a big ass ship that just appeared out of nowhere there. So it's clear that this is connected to that. So there isn't any need to go and sit and verify. It's like, no. Random UFO popping up and this broadcast. And obviously any other local stuff, it would have been really easy to say, oh, it's a broadcast from whether it's Nevada or South Africa, Namibia, whatever the case may be. So I think that kind of spoke for itself. Hence them acting so quick. So it wasn't a matter of acting too hastily as I initially, thought. And I think it also just speaks to what you mentioned again, as far as just the genius behind that tactic on Zod's part. But I think from there we can pretty much just jump, right into the meat of it, in terms of, because now we understand a little bit about, his motivation, and then in terms of the execution where, he and Superman are concerned. I think, what's your take on that?
I like the whole questioning of morality between the two, because Clark is always seen as the quintessential American, you know, even though he's an alien, he's the most human person you'll ever meet. And then to be Zod, who doesn't really value life in the same way, because he's just here to rule the world.
Yeah, he's just a pure tactician, like whatever's for the greater good.
And he wants to save his people, you know, he's not worried about the others. So the contrast between the two, I really enjoyed. And how it came across, you know, because as much as we're believing in General Zod, maybe Clark is also, you know, in the same manner. They had the whole chat, that vision, you know, of when Superman was standing on skulls. It's like, how do you build a world? By killing people. Like it's insane, but it's fact of life. And then to see Clark, like he was listening and then he wasn't. Because of that line that he could not cross. So I just really like the way they played off each other that way. And I know we also, it's like Clark still cares about the Kryptonians, because there are instances where it's like he doesn't want to kill, or like I think it was in the ship. I think Zod was like, you know, are you willing to kill your people? And he hesitated for that 2 seconds before he obviously just he being Superman, you know, blew up the ship. So there's always like that question of, can he pull the trigger?
And I think for me, that's what added a key element to their dynamic. You know, as you said, that philosophical sparring, so to speak.
And General Zod always pushing the envelope each time. You know what I mean?
I think for me that's what made it so much more interesting than your average philosophical bout, because usually it's one guy from one corner of the world versus another guy from an opposite corner of the world. But in this case, Clark has a foot in both worlds, you know, quite literally and figuratively. He's a Kryptonian raised on Earth, and who's, I think, edging towards being their defender, you know, because keep in mind, yes, he was rescuing people and all that, but he wasn't Earth's savior this entire time. He was just
a random.
He just happened to be in a situation where someone needs help, and then he provides that help. But his focus has been, who am I? I need to go on my own journey, try to find the answers for that, right? Then this guy comes, who is one of his own original people, number one, that answers a lot. And as much as Jor-El gave some information, there's so much more that Zod could potentially give. And then Zod turns out to be a guy who wants to destroy Earth and its people in order for them to inhabit it. And on top of that, Zod is not some, you know, low-life Kryptonian. He's a general, man. A general in the army. You know what armies do? Armies go to conquer places. You fight for the greater good, you know, whether it's an invasion for you know, resources, minerals, money, power, whatever the case is. If someone is in your way, you conquer that person and you push through, you know. And just to add on what I was saying earlier about understanding his motivation, his planet is not only dead, these guys have the actual keys and the tools in order to birth new life to a future race of Kryptonians. And that's why this guy is trying to die for. A lot of people speak a lot about wanting to die and fight for their own legacy, you know, my family, my children, my children's children. This guy is fighting for his entire planet, you know. So,
species.
Man, you know, it's a very interesting, as you said, even with Clark hesitating before giving an answer about killing his own people, you know, it's an interesting and challenging topic when you can't give an easy, quick, simple answer, you know, especially because there's also the part where with Jor-El and Clark then learning more about what his father actually planned for him. Initially, we know he chose Earth because the sun will give him great strength. And then he learns that, in a sense, his dad kind of wants him to conquer and colonize.
Be a god.
Just find his way of ensuring that the Kryptonians can continue to thrive and survive, you know, from or on planet Earth. So I think all of those things hitting him at once is just, man, insane. Before you can even process it, there's
what comes in. Like you wanted to find yourself, you found yourself, but then there's 1,000 more questions.
So I think, man, the pacing, the timing there just worked so nicely. Before he can even decide what philosophy to follow through, he now finds his biggest obstacle by far, because the next thing Zod has just decided, you know what, dude, if you're not gonna join me, fine, but I'm taking over the planet. We're gonna mess with its core, its magnetic fields, the atmospheric pressures and levels, so that it's suitable for Kryptonians. And if Earth if Earthlings are gonna die, then so be it. And I think, what a way, that's something else that jumped to me, what a way to introduce Superman to the world. Because this is now the first time that the world sees Superman as their defender. It's not on some, he saved the plane,
this is his first.
It's like the entire world is about to crumble and he's fighting for them. So I don't know if that jumped out to you in any sense in terms of the scale of not only what's at stake, but even the display.
I think I understood the scale, but I didn't realize the timing. Like you said, it was his first, like it was his debutante ball in essence. It was his coming out party. It's interesting because like people have always believed there's nothing else out there, and now there's.
Not only is there something, but look,
he's one of us basically. And even just the scale as well. I think the scale they did really well because it's just like skyscrapers crumbling, like 70-story skyscrapers just tumbling down.
Man.
And it's just from two aliens. It's just like, what are we even doing on this planet? So I think I agree with you. It's a really cool coming out party. They did it really well because it wasn't like speeches or you know what I mean. It's like when the quintessential the alien comes to Earth, they're like, take me to your leader. It was none of that. It was just more like, here are my terms. If not, this is what we're doing. They did it. Can you stop me?
That ultimatum. I think the way he was just so straight to the point was pretty dope.
And I mean, I really enjoyed the fight scene between Kryptonians, where it was in that small town with all of them, and that was also just kind of nuanced because it's like General Zod and his people were just killing everyone, whereas Clark went out of his way to save someone during a fight with like 3 or 4 different Kryptonians,
including those that are trying to shoot him down.
You know what I mean? And then it just sets the pace later in the movie where people are like, he's one of us. Just give him his space. We'll do our best to help him out.
I think the fights. We've touched a lot on the philosophies, the overall story. But
the fights.
The only thing that's missing is maybe just the end, but we'll get there. But the fights, man, I think, dude.
Like,
given the heavy reliance on CGI, I don't think
and it's not like
it's given enough credit for how amazing a job they did.
And you can't like choreograph it because it's not like martial arts type.
Dude, these guys were flying in the air, and it wasn't that typical thing of like the camera's just here and you show them fighting, like almost like Dragon Ball Z style where like they fight here, they fight there. The camera was like kind of following them in the atmosphere, so to speak. Like I can't recall ever seeing that style of shooting before or since. Even though the whole thing where it's like the camera will follow
over the shoulder,
he'll fly and then punch, and then it'll follow even that. No, man, I'm literally speechless. I'm literally speechless.
So I think especially the one with General Zod, like that. That was lovely. As you're saying, all of those elements, as well as you building in the philosophy as well, just brings the tension up to a level that that just grips you and makes you want to watch more, or more invested.
For me, I enjoyed it quite a lot. As you say, you can't do the whole typical martial arts thing. Number one, you're talking about aliens. Number two, Zod and his literal army are trained fighters.
Whereas
Superman has great strength, but he can't fight. He's never had to. But the way they displayed the power of the fight, it wasn't just your typical, you hit this and it goes there. They added some dimension to how you film it and how things fly around and react to the fight. The sound editing, so many different elements were on point to show you that, we're talking about damn near gods that are fighting here, not mere mortals, And I think the power of the fight, in a sense, speaks to the power or the scale at which the everything is just hanging in the balance as far as the world is at stake. If we don't win, these guys are gonna conquer us. And so I think I liked the fight in terms of even how slow it was. It wasn't like pop 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 pop. Now it's this big punch here, it's this big kick.
Over exaggerated stuff.
Man. There was an intensity to how they filmed it. And obviously, following that, there's the whole controversial scene.
The last scene.
The killing of Zod, or just the fact that Superman killed someone. Which again, at first I wasn't with it, and upon rewatching it, there's so many more things. The more I watch, that I realize, and one of those is when, I mean, they keep fighting and fighting and fighting, right? And then Clark, of course, destroys one of it was the soldiers, sorry. The soldiers that were destroying one of those two, ships that were creating a new magnetic field and that sort of thing. So now they can't restructure Earth's atmosphere to suit them anymore. So that plan has officially failed. And then Zod says to him, you know what? Oh, okay, I see. If you're going to keep defending these people, I'm going to show you. You and I are not going to stop fighting until one of us is dead. That's literally what he said to him. And then after that, he said, I mean, look, of course, whatever he was doing as far as restructuring our atmosphere was going to kill humans, but that was more of like a instantaneous all over type of thing. Yeah. We're going to suffocate, for lack of a better term. Then this guy goes and says, and on top of that, I'm going to now kill them. You're going to watch them die one by one.
And the thing there, I think, was Zod is like, I was created to protect my planet. And I don't have a planet, so I don't know what to do anymore.
I've got nothing to live for.
I've got nothing to live for.
So I'm going all out. Yeah. Like, I'm not going to stop until you stop me. And I mean, what in the world is that going to do? We've seen, your little guns, missiles, handcuffs, nothing can touch these guys. So for me, I think in the context of the story, the fact that Superman ended up killing someone, which is a no-no in Superman law, made sense as far as how they portrayed. They built up to this thing from the very first scene in this movie, damn near. When Zod is like, I'm going to take over my planet for the sake and preservation of my planet. And if I can't do it here on Krypton, we're going to go for another world where we can do it. And keep in mind, this is what Krypton does anyway. These guys are world conquerors. So it's just another day at the office as far as he's concerned. And with this stubborn guy now being Superman, standing in the way constantly, he's like, I'm going to terrorize you until one of us is dead. So I think, there was no other way in which this could end, given that that's how they established the story. So I don't know about you, but I'm now at a point where I'm like, I can understand that thing.
I think even at the time, first watch, I didn't mind it at all. It was different. I liked it being different.
Yeah.
Obviously, interrogating the movie now under the lens of wanting to discuss it, he realizes like he was given an impossible choice.
Yeah.
And he had to choose, and he chose what he knows.
Yeah.
And anyone else would probably do the same.
And I mean, philosophy and threat aside, even in the moment itself, he literally said to him, now you're going to be forced, if you want to fight for them so much, you're going to have to mourn them. And then he started zapping towards them, and the laser was getting closer and closer. It wasn't just about that group of people there. That was just him showing.
It was the embodiment, just like
of the idea.
Humans,
yeah. And he's telling you that I'm going to do this to every last one of these 7 billion people, So I think, Clark was then in a position where it's like, hey, it's this or nothing.
Yeah.
Hence, of course, the big reaction that he had afterwards, because even he's like, I don't want to kill, it's not who I am. And I think for me, if we keep in mind what we know about later movies, he didn't all of a sudden go on the killing spree. Because he's never been in that position.
Well, you could say this was the line in his sand now, because it's the first time. As I said, it's his coming out party.
Yeah. You sometimes have to cross that line, and then you know that
I'm never gonna cross this line
again. As opposed to, not that it's arbitrary to say don't kill. I mean, I've never killed, and I don't ever want to kill. So I don't need to do it to know that I shouldn't. But again, given his particular set of circumstances, I think it definitely made sense, man. I don't know if there's maybe things you didn't enjoy so much about this.
Not really, eh?
Yeah.
I think as a whole, I really enjoyed the movie.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like a long movie, even though it is. No, I got not much to say.
I think for me, there's only one negative that I still have. All the others I've pretty much mentioned, in terms of the story justifying it in some other fashion. So it's no longer negative for me. But the way in which Jonathan Kent died, I think that makes absolutely no sense. I understand we've spoken about how you always try to teach him about restraining his powers and keeping it a secret, but in a situation where not only is it panic for everyone, but your dad is just there and he's telling you, no, don't save me, and then you just let it be with all your powers that you have. People were not sitting on the side watching him. They were all distracted by trying to keep themselves alive, their family, and so they were distracted enough, and he's more than fast enough to have found a way around it. But the half justification I could sort of provide for it is that it was a full circle moment, so to speak, as far as all those lessons landing with him, where he kept saying, look, man, no exception. Don't display your powers. Don't that. Because remember in other interactions, maybe he'll say, be careful about where and how you say it. But he was like, no, just don't do it. If anything, maybe go, if you need to, find yourself and do your own journey, you can do that. But the powers thing, don't do it. And for Jonathan came to say, even for my own life, don't do it. I think, it was just a matter of, that's how important the lesson was. That aside, I'm still like, you could have found a whole other way to justify, just as you've justified about everything else that I once criticized. But I think, unless if there's anything else that you want to add, that's pretty much that. The only thing is, of course, our rating for the movie out of 10. What do you want to give it?
8 out of 10.
I think, I'll give it a solid 8 as well. This was an amazing movie. Doesn't get enough credit, and I don't know if that's from the world or just because I was so stubborn in hating it for all these years.
I think, they always say hindsight is 20/20. So I think first, if you haven't rewatched it, or you have to watch it without coming in with any bias.
That's the important thing. Yeah. Even if it's a matter of watching this review without having watched it recently, go watch it again with all of these points in mind, and I think most, if not all of you, will agree to us to quite a large extent. Then the final bit would be our ranking, for our DCEU movies. Of course, there's only been 3 thus far. There's Wonder Woman 1 and 2, and then Man of Steel. And I think, without a doubt, this is the top 2. But the question is, which is number 1?
I would say this is number 1.
Yeah. I think without hesitation, I would agree with you.
This is number 1.
It's Man of Steel,
Wonder Woman
1, and then
Wonder Woman.
And then the other one.
Other one. Doesn't even deserve to be on the list.
No, we'll leave it at that for now, man. Shout out for sticking it through. I think obviously this is like a big review, but we would hope that we've justified it just as the movie justified itself in so many ways. And as usual, man, hit us up Instagram or the comments here, the Phantom Geek Zone everywhere. Shout out to Superman as a whole, because they of course were the inspiration behind the name of this channel, the whole Phantom Geek Zone, the Phantom Zone element. And man, we'll catch y'all at the next review. As usual, we're sticking with our DCEU recap as well as our Marvel recap, but we're gonna start introducing some other recaps along the way. Keep an eye out for that. But for now, see you at the next one. Peace.